It is 10 a.m. We have several presenters that need to come and go in different committees, so we will be timely. If anyone would like to speak on either bill today, I would like for you to sign up. Well, you need to sign up on the registry right by the door, and then that will be brought to staff. Just as a reminder, there are no signs and protesting in the room. A lot of times, tourism and outdoor recreation, our jurisdiction covers fun and entertainment and presenting the Commonwealth in a lovely light to bring tourism dollars into the Commonwealth, but we also are very capable of discussing complex issues and making difficult decisions. So today may be one of those days, but I've got faith in all of us. We're gonna handle this well. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Representative Baker. Representative Chester Burton. Representative Dotson. Representative Fugit. Representative Gordon. Representative Lawrence.
Here.
Representative Marzian. Representative McPherson.
Here.
Representative Moore.
Here.
Representative Pollock.
Here.
Representative Tackett Lafferty. Representative Thompson. Representative Truitt.
Here.
Representative Wesley.
Here.
Representative Whitaker.
Here.
Representative White.
Richard.
Representative Wilson. Here. Vice Chair Witten.
Here.
Chair King.
Present. We do have a quorum and able to take up official business. Ms. Janine, do we need a motion on last month's bills or last week's bills? Minutes?
No, we don't have minutes.
Okay, very good. Well, our first presenter, Representative Truitt, please come to the table with any of your presenters. We will tackle the agenda in order. So first hearing House Bill 114. And is it my understanding you were anticipating someone on Zoom?
Yes, I believe so.
I saw
Okay.
him on the screen just a minute ago.
Oh, okay. Very good. Very good. Staff is making that happen. In that time frame, will you please introduce yourself for the record, and we'll get your guest.
All right. Thank you,
Zoom.
Chairman. Representative Truitt, House District 89, representing Jackson Lee Wolf, part of Madison, part of Laurel.
I am Curtis Rogers, the president of the Red River Gorge Climbers Coalition.
Very good. And do we have connection with your guest on Zoom? Would you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, hopefully y'all can hear me.
Yes.
Thank
yes,
you for having me.
We can.
My name's Daniel Dunn. I'm the Eastern Regional Director at the Access Fund. And I apologize I'm not there in person, but I appreciate y'all zooming me in.
Thank you very much. Representative, please proceed.
All right. What you have before you is a very simple bill. And I brought some backup just in case anybody has questions about the anything more complicated. But if you look at the bill, all it does is it adds rock climbing, bouldering, and rappelling under to where a farmer or a landowner is not held liable if something like that happens on their farm. It's a very simple bill.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions? Representative McPherson.
Yes. Now, this is not anything that I really take up, but we do own some farmland, and there's always issues with somebody getting hurt on things. But my oldest daughter and her husband and grandchildren do this for a sport. And they come even to Bowling Green and go and do indoor climbing and always look for cliffs and stuff to climb. And it's definitely becoming a growing sport and, something I'll probably never get into, but I do enjoy watching it.
Very good.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Lawrence.
Thank you, gentlemen, for this bill. Will this add rock climbing to the pumpkin farm?
Well, it could, but right now probably not. Probably not.
Thank you, Representative.
Any other questions from members? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Baker. Representative Chester Burton.
Yes.
Representative Dotson. Yes. Representative Gordon. Yes. Representative Fugit,
Yes.
Representative Lawrence,
Yes.
Representative Marzian, Representative McPherson,
Yes.
Representative Moore,
Yes.
Representative Pollock,
Yes.
Representative Tackett Lafferty, Representative Thompson,
Yes.
Representative Truitt,
Yes.
Representative Wesley, Representative Whitaker,
Yes.
Representative White, Representative Wilson, Representative Witten,
Yes.
Chair King.
Yes, ma'am. You have passed this committee and it is now eligible for consideration on the House floor. Thank you and have a good morning. Thank you
Chairman.
for joining
Thank you.
and joining on Zoom. We appreciate it. Next, if Representative Bray will please come to the table, we will be hearing House Bill 700. Please introduce yourself and present your bill, please.
Good morning. Josh Bray, House District 71.
Rich Storm, Commissioner, Kentucky Fish and Wildlife.
We do have a committee substitute and a title amendment. Would anyone like to make a motion on
Motion.
adopting?
Motion on the sub.
We have a motion on the sub and I think a second from Representative Fugit. All of those in favor of adopting the committee sub, please identify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Now we are discussing the committee sub. Please proceed.
Thank you all. So over the past few days, I've been able to talk with most of you about chronic wasting disease in Kentucky. What's kind of surprising is it's a big part of my world because I'm a pretty avid deer hunter. And so watching kind of what's happened nationwide with chronic wasting disease has been a real eye-opener. And I've had some pretty big concerns about what the future of it here is within Kentucky and how it's going to affect our outdoor industry, how it's going to affect our tourism industry. Kentucky has about a $1 billion outdoor industry related to hunting and fishing. Chronic wasting disease, for those who aren't familiar, is a prion disease similar to mad cow disease. We've all heard about mad cow disease, and we know that what happened with it, particularly in England. But our white-tailed deer and elk are susceptible to CWD. And over the years, it started in about 1967 out in Colorado at Fort Collins. And the deer, it was at a research facility, and the deer were shipped out all across the country. And we've started seeing CWD pop up in other places outside of Colorado. Forever, it was isolated around Colorado and Wyoming. And then we started seeing cases in Pennsylvania, New York, and the one that is kind of the poster child for this, Wisconsin. So in 2002, Wisconsin had its first CWD test and come back positive. And by the time everyone was mobilized, it was really too late. It had spread pretty wide. The very next year, there was an immediate 10% cut in hunting license sales, because who wants to take the chance on some new disease like this that nobody's ever heard of affecting what they hunt and ultimately end up eating. And so as we've watched what's happened in Wisconsin, it spread pretty quick. You know, at the beginning, they had a plan, and then they backed off that. And now one of the largest deer hunting states in the country, their Fish and Wildlife has a $16 million deficit because of hunter decline. What we've seen in Wisconsin is 30% of does within the core CWD area test positive for chronic wasting disease. 60% of the 3-year-old bucks test positive for chronic wasting disease. And so if you're a hunter in Wisconsin, now when you go out in the field, if you're wanting to provide good, clean, healthy food for your family, you have to send that off to a laboratory to know whether it's safe to eat or not. And here in Kentucky, we've had 2 cases. Luckily, those have been very isolated. And luckily, we've had some pretty good response. We've had 1 case in the wild that happened out in western Kentucky, and we've had one case in a captive cervid facility in Breckinridge County. My greatest fear, as I sit here today, if we do nothing and CWD spreads across this state once it hits interior Kentucky, we will forever wish we had done something today. And with that, I'll let Commissioner Storm testify.
That was really good. If I can comment on that, we're dealing with a disease that's 100% incurable, 100% always fatal. We have 2 cases. We came to the table with a common sense approach, and I can say we originally started with who's going to be against this, and we went to those folks and we started working with them. And we've conceded in a multitude of ways with this bill. I think that there could well be some other things that could be said, but I'll tell you what we have here. We have a room of people that love deer, and that's the bottom line. We want the best outcome that we can have. And I can tell you, my equivalents in other states say this is the single most depressing thing that they've had to deal with. So, with the passion of Representative Bray, we've talked about this, and we wanted to create a common sense approach. And it's as simple as this. Why would we take animals from a known circle and move them into a radius that we don't know that we have the disease, or we can't prove that we have the disease? This too will be a management plan, and as time goes on, we will have this disease in other parts of the Commonwealth, and so this is going to be something that we all in this room are going to have a responsibility to work on. So we are not against any industry, but I can tell you we all have a conservation responsibility. We have a fiduciary responsibility. And so actually the hunting is $2 billion each year. We have 1.2 million deer in the Commonwealth. The industry has about 3,350 deer. And so with this legislation, it is my understanding these folks would be able to continue to export to other states. They'll have to comply with those laws. I can't speak to some of those laws in other states. I know that they do ship to other states. They too will also be able to continue to sell meat, the byproducts, the antlers. They'll still be able to sell semen. They'll still be able to do a lot of things that they have been able to do. And then the compromise of this bill, why does it apply to Kentucky Fish and Wildlife? Well, I have a lot of friends here in this room. I'm thankful for you all. We asked for 30 miles for the agency, 10 miles for the industry through compromise. There aren't many facilities that overlap within 10 miles, but we have tried to find ways that the industry could continue to operate. And so with one of those, preemptively, double fencing would get them out of this program. So if they were willing to double fence before a CWD surveillance zone exists, then they could get out of it. And that could be something that's talked about further, but we would like that to be a simple fence that's not easy for deer to pass through to get to the perimeter. But simply to say, if a doe goes in heat, whether it's captive or in the wild animals try to do wild things. And so I love the deer. There are a lot of great people in the industry that feed their family. They care about the resource just as much as we do. And this is a common sense approach to try to limit and maximize the time that we have for a Commonwealth that has one of the best whitetail deer herds in the nation, arguably the best. Every year we see an increase in non-resident participation. It's because we've been fortunate, we've been blessed. I really appreciate the fact that Josh Bray was willing to come to the table and do this. I really appreciate everybody that's worked with us on this. And if there's some things that can be worked on after today to get this thing onto the floor, Kentucky Fish and Wildlife will be willing to hear, listen, and talk. I can't tell you in my tenure that there would be anything more important for conservation than this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would be willing to answer any questions.
Thank you. We do have two. First going to Representative Dotson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner and Representative Bray, for bringing this. As of yesterday morning, this is the first I'd heard about this bill, and so I'm trying to gather all the information I can to make an educated vote here, and I fully trust Commissioner Storm and his judgment. But just to clarify some things for me, there's a lot of things that are regulated, comes down from the USDA, that has nothing really to do with the Ag Department or Fish and Wildlife, such as if a deer tests positive for CWD, that herd either has to be eliminated, or what are the other options there?
It is my understanding that a 5-year quarantine is a possibility, but I've also heard conjecture that herd would have to be put down within that facility. Also understand that there's a livestock indemnity program, much like cattle or chickens, that would pay those farmers perhaps not what their livestock's worth,
right,
to be fair, but that's a program that's above and beyond what we would have here in the Commonwealth.
And is CWD, is it transferred? Is it airborne? Is it contact? I just want to know from my own understanding.
So CWD is transferred by a prion, and what that is it's just a weirdly folded protein within the deer's body, and then it ends up accumulating around the brainstem and causes, you can Google it, it's called zombie deer, is pretty much what it is. They lose control of their motor functions, they begin shaking, they're malnourished, they lose fear of people, they pretty much, they don't become deer anymore. And the biggest issue with this is these prions aren't easily destroyed. You can't disinfect them, you can't bleach them, you can't burn them. Once it's in the soil, it's there for a while. And so if you have a CWD positive animal that a hunter's harvested and he disposes of the carcass, you'll have a scavenger come by inevitably to clean that up. It's the circle of life, and their droppings will spread that throughout the area, which is why we have a concern with the 10-mile radius. There is a live test for CWD. This isn't something that we can go in and into a facility and they can swab their nose or anything like that. It has to have a lymph node or brain tissue, from my understanding. And so there's no live test available. So the only time you can test these animals are after they've been harvested or after they're deceased. And so it's hard for me to wrap my mind around some kind of test out program, because we've discussed that quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because CWD is kind of like any other disease. Take cancer, for instance. Today I may be cancer free, but 2 weeks from now I may have cancer, and we just don't know. And the only way to test an animal is by harvesting it.
May I follow up real quickly? Thank you for that. That explains a whole lot. But there are other diseases besides CWD, like EHD and things like that as well. But when it comes to CWD, if a human consumes a deer that has been infected, what are there documented cases? Are there things that demonstrate what it does to human consumption?
So there's a lot of research going into this right now. There is no documented case of CWD transferring to from a deer to a human. We've had cases where similar prion diseases absolutely transfer from animal to animal. Mad cow disease, similar to CWD, or scrapie in sheep or goats, is transferred by a prion. Mad cow and scrapie can cross the species barrier. So far, it's not been documented. Only cervids are affected by chronic wasting disease. And within Kentucky, we've got 2 different types of cervids, and we've not even talked about elk out east. And my greatest fear is, after all the good work that's been done in eastern Kentucky to build the elk herd up, to build tourism around elk hunting, is that this finds its way to interior eastern Kentucky and it gets in the elk population. So I wish, honestly, I wish there was a different solution, but unfortunately, looking at the reality of how CWD's transferred and looking at how the reality of how it's spread in other states and how it's been taken care of in other states. In 2004, the state of New York had 2 positive cases within served facilities, and they implemented a program that's very, very similar to this. And New York State's been CWD free since 2005, I believe. They put the same 5-year zone, the 5-year time frame in. They put the same 10-mile radius in within those facilities. They stopped the transport in and out because I love deer. I love deer hunting. I would never do anything to hurt anybody's business. But there's far too much to lose if we sit here and do nothing.
And may I add, for an incurable disease, an ounce of prevention's better than a pound to cure. There's no cure, and that's why we came to this table today. And so it's critically important. And I would say to Representative Bray's point, the elk herd in southeast Kentucky may be the biggest conservation achievement in North America. Not Kentucky, but in North America. And in fact, if we tried that today, it'd be irresponsible because of CWD across the country. And lastly, we've learned from a lot of failures and achievement from other states because we are truly one of the last states that are dealing with this level. So if there's any silver lining to this, it's the fact that we've seen a lot of things happen. There's a lot of history, and we're at a point right now it's critical.
Representative McPherson.
Yes, so thank you all today for bringing this. As the state of Kentucky, we've dealt with tuberculosis and bangs in cattle for years, and we've been a state that be bang free, and then all the states around you get a rating. Or is Kentucky rated, or are all these states rated on this disease or not? Or
I can't speak to a rating, but you can do a quick search and you can see the cases across America. It's very concerning. And in the wild deer herd, we're surrounded. And the captive deer herd, we're surrounded. In some states, they don't have captive deer. And I would like to add to that in terms of the captivity. Some people have things like zoos, show and tell, for lack of a better term, and they have deer. Some facilities have breeding facilities and high fence hunting. And so there's a multitude of people that do this with different interests. Some facilities have no intentions to move those animals out. That to us probably poses less of a risk. And so the movement we care about, the Department of Agriculture does have oversight over the inside of those pens, and then we coexist on the exterior fence. And so those are the type of facilities that exist, and there's about 100 of those, just a little over 100, and 3,350 captive deer in Kentucky.
If I may, Madam Chair, one more. So I'm looking at it from another industry standpoint. So say that this gets out in the state and we have less deer hunters, as Representative Bray was talking about, then our deer population actually goes up. And again, we want that balance because, I sit on banking and insurance also, and when deer population goes up, then we have a lot more wrecks. We have a lot more, incidents with deer crossing the road and just insurance claims. And so we want to have a balance, and we sure don't want to be a state that gets labeled that we don't want people to come and hunt here because they can't harvest and take their deer back. And so that number needs to stay pretty constant, I think, at where we can hold it, or where you all think we can hold it, because, really not having deer harvested really blows up our population in other ways. So, that's just a comment or a thought in my process. I'd like to hear y'all's comments on that.
So from a real estate perspective, when we think about this, I know guys that wear camouflage, and they come to Kentucky to buy land. They buy real estate so they can hunt here. They participate in a multitude of activities. They buy feed. They buy farming supplies. They pay taxes. They have industry. They hire guides. This is huge business, about $1 billion on the deer side annually. And so there's a great deal of financial risk associated with this. Your advanced thinking on auto claims, when a deer loses its fear of getting hurt, of being hunted, or standing in the middle of a road, everything changes. And so auto collisions will necessarily go up. That day's coming. That day, in fact, is coming. And so that's why this is of critical importance. To minimize what we can do, or maximize what we can do, will minimize the exposure that we have. And so we can influence what man does to move animals. We can't influence what wild animals do. That's why we're here.
Representative Pollock.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Opening deer season, my family is the biggest family reunion we have back home. I kid you not, there's about 35 of us, and we spread out all over the farms. And so deer season, deer hunting is very dear to my heart. I'm just curious. I mean, obviously, I think during your presentation, you've opened up the line of communication with the deer farmers. I'll be honest with you, I got 2 emails yesterday talking about what was happening today, and I guess I'm just stuck in the weeds over here not knowing it, but obviously it's I have it around my home. And you all have opened up that line of communication. I think I heard you say that, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then also, my question is, deer, cervids, or livestock underneath the Department of Agriculture. Does Commissioner Shell, the Department of Agriculture here, do they have any concerns? Have they been involved in this conversation as well?
They have been involved, and throughout the process, they have given us their concerns. And to the point, you know how this works. It's like we're trying to put potluck together and satisfy everybody's needs, and ultimately, most of the concessions have been given here to get to this point, to say the main thing is the main thing, and that is we don't want to transport any kind of deer from a known hot spot to a place that's clean. And so what you all haven't heard from this committee, you haven't heard from license holders, because much like Representative Dotson, they're going to find out where this is going. And I can say many of those folks want to be much more aggressive, much more regulatory, to the point that we really have worked a large group of people. And I do wish we could package this up perfect where everybody smiled and clapped. But it's not possible when we get here. But each and every one of us know that we're diplomats and we're mediators, and we do the best that we can for end products. And Representative Bray has been up day and night here for a few days trying to put this all together.
Representative Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a quick question, and then I got a couple statements, but I first want to recognize one of my constituents that's here that owns a local deer farm. I want to thank you for coming up here and being involved in the legislative process, because that's majorly important to what we do here as representatives, is hearing from our constituents and hearing from the people that we represent. But I do want to thank you guys for the bill today and what you've done. I understand that you've worked very hard, and I want to thank you secondly for being my friends, and you really are. And I know that I can call you anytime if I need something. You're there. Josh took my call last night at 8:30 at night. You know, and we had a conversation about what's happening. And Rich, you've done the same for me many, many times, and I appreciate that. It is my understanding. Let me say this first. I know very little about deer industry. I don't know a lot about the farming side of it. I've hunted, like Representative Pollock said. My family and I, a lot of my friends, we go out and deer hunt. But as far as the raising or having a farm, I know very little about it. So I'm speaking more of trying to gather as much information, like many of us have stated here today, just trying to get the information we need. You stated that there is no live test, and we had this conversation last night. It's my understanding, with my conversations with you and what little bit of research I was able to do last night, that there is a live test. However, it has not been approved by whom? Who would need to approve that?
National Vet Standard Laboratory. I would be very, very confident that there will be a live test in years to come. And as soon as something like that's approved, that will be great for the industry, maybe not so much for the department. Can you imagine us trying to go out and catch 1,000 wild deer? So for the industry, I think that's a big silver lining, and that's why we need to have a management plan going forward. Because as this changes, this is going to evolve. The department strategies are going to evolve. Leadership's going to change, certainly, and that would be a great win for us, because at this point, it takes a dead deer for you to have an approved test. We've tested over 60,000 deer at Kentucky Fish and Wildlife. We spent millions of dollars so far. Why? Why would we do that? Because we have an obligation to people in the outdoors. We have an obligation to tell them the truth. And so if we find a positive case, we don't want to find it. And I think some states have taken the approach, even from a public health perspective, we don't want to find it. So we're just gonna avoid this. But I can tell you this, we've tested 60,000 deer. That's an outstanding effort from the department with great resources. And so we hope we don't find any additional cases. I think the industry for testing their animals out of their facility. And, we know that there's been a case in Breckinridge County. We don't want to find other cases, but collectively, I think we can prolong a better Kentucky by working together through this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I?
And just
Briefly.
one more thing. When the day comes that there's a live test, we can absolutely come back in and change all of this, because it won't be as necessary, because there'll be a means to where we can test out. There could be a program put in place just for continuous monitoring. Unfortunately, we're just not there right now.
Thank you for that. I will add that the live test, I understand the sense of urgency that we have here, totally. And I think that our deer farmers and the people that are in that industry completely understand the sense of urgency. But I feel like that we could do something as a state to push our federal legislators, our federal people, to make, what do we need to do to make this live test available to our farmers? Because the way the bill's written now, and I'm looking at it from a small business perspective, because that's what I know. I understand small business. A double fence for just my fellow that come up here today on his small farm is around $35,000. If I was told tomorrow that my business had to spend $35,000 to keep running, I would have problems with that as well. And then the 5 years, and I understand both sides, but the 5 years to a small business owner, you can't conduct business for 5 years only within this small radius. I go hundreds of miles at times to seek after the finances that my company needs. When I do that, if I was told I couldn't do that for the next 5 years, it could crush my business. And so for that reason, I'm going to be a no today, but I appreciate you guys coming up today. I think there's that sense of urgency. If we could push that to the federal level to get this live test done, I think that would be a compromise that these guys would be willing to make.
Representative White.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Is this CWD, is it transferable to cattle and domestic livestock?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Just strictly deer and elk?
Yes, and heaven forbid the day it is.
Okay. Also, I can't remember 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, when we had deer just dropping dead across the state. Was that a different disease?
Yeah, that's something called EHD, or blue tongue disease. Okay. That is transferred by something called a midge. It'll go in and an infected midge will bite a deer. Usually it's more prevalent during droughts because they're kind of all congregating together around water. And it seems like it's kind of cyclical. It absolutely does impact deer numbers, but they always do seem to bounce back.
And it's a virus.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We do have a hard stop in a moment for a next committee meeting. If our next presenter speaking against House Bill 700 will please come forward. To be fair and balanced, 2 presenters had 20 minutes to discuss and take questions. So we have 7 folks signed up to speak. We will give you that same 20 minutes, reserving just enough time to get our vote in before we need to vacate the room. The ones on the list: Henry Woodard, Jake Anderson, Marianne Hall, Clint Steele, Adam Steele, Tony Maddox, and Representative Josh Callaway. So you can discuss among yourselves how you would like to present in 20 minutes. Thank you all for being here. If you will please push the little button, it will illuminate bright green. Please identify yourself and then give us your perspective on House Bill 700. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Chair King and members of the committee. My name's Henry Woodard, and I'm on the board of directors for the Kentucky Alternative Livestock Association. Our business, I've got a business that's in Glasgow, Kentucky. We've got 220 acres. We have a hunting preserve, and we also have a deer farm. We raise deer. I've been doing it for 23 years. It's a passion of mine, and it's also a business. It can be a very lucrative business if done in the right ways. We have several farmers here with us, and if they could stand or wave just to identify and let everyone know that, you know, the people that we have here today that's in this business.
Thank you all for being here with us today. We appreciate you being part of the process.
Thank you. Members of KALA are made up of farmers that breed white-tailed deer and participate in a stringent USDA program. Our farms are in 56 different counties throughout the state and are law-abiding people trying to earn a living. Farms in Kentucky are regulated by Fish and Wildlife, the Department of Agriculture, and ultimately the USDA. So we're very heavily regulated. I would say more so heavily regulated than in any other animal under the Department of Ag. So continuing on, as business owners and sportsmen, we take CWD very seriously, and we abide by the USDA standards, the Kentucky Department of Agriculture CWD response plan that currently exists. We have a CWD response plan already in the state, and it is a response plan by our Department of Ag that we fall under. So we test every mortality in our herds for CWD, regardless of the proximity to a CWD positive case. We already test 100% of our deer, every mortality that dies. And I know that Commissioner Storm brought up that they've tested 60,000 deer over the last 20 years. I'd like to put that in perspective. They've tested less than 1.75% of deer over that time because we have a population of 1.2 million deer in the state. That sounds like a big number, but in reality, as a percentage, it's very small compared to the 100% that we're required to test and have always been required to test. Unfortunately, HB 700 could shut down the operations of many of our farms. Jake Anderson, who's sitting right beside of me, Jake's here today. He's one of those. Jake's place is 8 miles from a positive CWD. And we also have Miss Marianne Hall with us, and she would like to offer her perspective as well and give them a chance to speak after I'm finished here. In closing, KALA wants to have this conversation be part of the policy that protects both wild and captive deer. See, CWD, none of us want it. We all agree on that. And we're going to great extremes on our end because we have huge investments tied up. And we have been breeding for resistance, just like they eradicated scrapies in sheep. We're doing the same thing with deer right now with CWD. We're breeding for resistance. And it's not just happening in captive deer, but in the 2021 CWD symposium that was held, there was an abstract put out by Wisconsin DNR and by the University of Wisconsin. That abstract showed that in their wild population, the more resistant animals have been taken over. as a matter of fact, the numbers have jumped 68% in 20 years. So Wisconsin right now today, they spoke about Wisconsin being devastated. Wisconsin has 73% more deer in the state of Wisconsin than they had 20 years ago. So let's think about that. Is CWD going to wipe out a deer population? The answer to that is no. CWD is not going to wipe out the population. It is no harm to humans. We already have checks and balances in place under the regulation that we have with USDA and Department of Ag. And so I would just like to end there and thank you for the opportunity to present our concern today. And please vote no for this legislation. And that would because it would close businesses in the state of Kentucky. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Woodard. We appreciate you referencing your guest, but we do also need for you to officially introduce yourself by pushing the button until it illuminates bright green. Make sure it's pulled very close to you. We don't, just as letting you know the environment, we don't have any questions yet, so you can kind of monitor your time on, do you want to give an explanation, or I can let you know if we start having questions. Thank you for being here. Please introduce yourself and proceed.
My name is Jake Anderson. I'm from Meade County. Been raising deer for good now? So Jake Anderson from Meade County, Kentucky. Been raising deer for right at 10 years now. We've got roughly 150 deer. This HB 700 would pretty much shut us down. There's no way we could export deer. And I mean, the financial burden of it alone, we've probably got roughly $400,000 to $500,000 invested in our operation. And with HB 700, we have no way of selling our deer. And right now we're 8.1 miles away from a positive. So my concern is what is our out on it? You know, there's no live testing. There's really no alternative for us. And I guess we haven't brought a deer in our farm in 6 years now. So if this disease is being, you know, brought in by transport, there's no way it's on our farm. I mean, we haven't brought a new deer to that place in 6 years. And every deer that does die gets tested. So for us not to be able to export a deer would be insane. I mean, the disease can't be there if it hasn't been brought in.
You did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you can push that button and pull it close to you, and please proceed. We still don't have any questions in the queue, so please keep making your case.
Hello, my name is Mary Ann Hall, and I own a deer farm in Winchester, Kentucky. I also am a physician assistant during day and farm at night at Clark Regional. I know as part of it, being a PA, we go by either best practices or industry standards. I do want to say, first of all, double fencing has not been proven in any other state to benefit in stopping the spread of CWD, and there is no other state in the United States that has double fencing in place at this time. We really didn't get together on what we were going to say today, so I'm just going to read what I do have. Also, with Mr. Representative White, I do have a 10-year study where cattle were actually, the study was for 10 years on cattle, and there was nothing was shown where CWD would be transmitted to cattle through that whole 10-year study. And I'd be happy to give that to you. We are farmers of legally obtained and produced livestock, not wild deer, just like cattle, sheep, and goats. Our purpose is to meet the consumer demands such as meats, hides, antlers, breeding stock, and hunting stock. We have privately owned, genetically superior stock on our farms that are not wild deer. Our stock is regulated by the USDA Agriculture Department just like cattle, just like goats, just like sheep. Kentucky has some of the most stringent regulations to follow as compared to any other state. We get inspected by the USDA department every quarter. All of our stock is tagged with USDA 840 number tags, just like cattle. We are TB and brucellosis certified, and we are heavily monitored through a CWD monitoring program where we test 100%. We also have inspectors on our premises when moving any animal in and out of our farm to another facility. We implement vaccine programs on our farms to provide healthier herds. We are participating in many research projects and programs to help find a cure for CWD and to also help find and implement proper testing. A lot of research is currently underway for breeding deer for CWD resistant genes and is currently being implemented on our farms due to this research. This is all being done because we care about CWD, not only affecting our herd, but we also care about it affecting the wild herd. Deer farmers, we are being very proactive in this matter, not just trying to find or to promote regulations, but we are just trying to find solutions to part of this problem, and we are heavily involved in that. Double fencing, as I said, has not been proven in the spread of CWD. I do want it to also be understood that CWD is environmentally spread. Studies have shown that it is transmitted by avian scavengers such as crows, ravens, pigs, coyotes, mice. It has also been shown to be transported possibly by grass plants such as wheat and alfalfa. Therefore, are we going to implement rules to double fence pig farms? Are we going to stop the shipments of alfalfa out west where deer and elk have grazed and it's full of mice and feces from coming into our cattle and our horse farms? Why are we the only livestock that's trying to be regulated in this way? Is it really about CWD at this time, having that it has multiple routes of transmission, or is it another agenda? Why should we not take a more proactive approach in this matter? Why not focus on educating the public about CWD, becoming involved in more research on CWD and testing, and focus on educating the hunters on proper carcass disposal and handling, and providing education on the possibility of transmission of CWD through free-range wild deer baiting sites, mineral licks, etc. Why not focus on how we're going to keep CWD from spreading through the wild deer population into our state from the recently 400 cases that were in Tennessee several years ago? Is that even possible? Also, it's important to note, Tennessee did not have captive farms, in the state. So where did they get that? It's also because there are multiple routes of transmission through the environment, not because of a captive deer farm in that state. Once again, we need more education and research. Also, we were talking about there will be a big economic impact because this bill will kill deer farmers. There's no way already, if you put the 10-mile radius, I think there's approximately 10 farms that will go out of business from day one. So economic impact on the already established farms, new farms in the community. As we all know, fencing is very costly. Adding another perimeter fence already on an already existing structure could be virtually impossible for some farmers due to the cost, and they will close. Moreover, adding a double fence around an already existing pen structure that goes along property boundaries could be impossible due to space. The space isn't there, and plus you're taking 10 foot of our land away that we could we could use for other farming purposes. Therefore, established farms may close, and this would also be a huge barrier to new deer farmers. Therefore, fencing may cost anywhere from $20,000 to $100,000, depending on the acreage fenced, the type of fencing used, etc. And fencing is, I think the average cost is around $13 to $15 per foot. And because of this, not only will farms close and new farms not open, our current stock will depreciate. If established farms and preserves close, then this will affect the community in a very negative way. Local feed stores will no longer get our orders for special deer blends and minerals. Local farms will no longer get our orders for alfalfa. Local stores such as Tractor Supply, Rural King, Lowe's will no longer get our business for farm supplies and building materials. Local vets will no longer be needed for our vet care. And employees hired as farm hands will lose their job, and this could go on and on. I was speaking with a deer farmer the other day in Western Kentucky who put more than $1 million into his community last year. Therefore, if his farm or preserve closes, not only will it affect the local community, but it would decrease tourism by decreasing the number of out-of-state hunters coming into Kentucky to use his facilities. This is just another example of the negative impact of double fencing and that this bill could cause. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for sharing your firsthand experiences on that. Just to give this group a lay of the land, we have 3 people in queue for questions. Do any of the other folks signed up in opposition have something different or new to add to the presentation so far? Or would you like to go to questions and I'll let you choose? It looks like Representative Callaway, would you like to?
Briefly, if I may.
You are no stranger to the General Assembly, but please push your green button and introduce yourself and proceed. Thank you.
Josh Callaway, State Representative in District 10, and I appreciate for the opportunity to be here. I would have tried to get to you personally, but as things roll here, things happen quickly. A couple things that I want to bring to light, and that is the impact on some of these deer farms. I know it's been brought up about specifically the impact to fish and wildlife. And while I do understand that, but some of these particular businesses also bring hunters here. Part of those monies are coming from people that are coming here to hunt as a result of some of these outfitters and different types of businesses throughout our state. And I do want to bring to light a couple things. One is that this initially started from a government facility where these deer were let out into the wild. So this began as a government problem initially 60 years ago. So I want you to understand that. The other thing is when they have a CWD positive and they do testing, they cannot get an outside test to confirm that it is a positive. So the regulation aspect of it that Representative Lawrence was talking about, we need to be looking at ways to deregulate toward being able to fix the issue instead of more regulation that actually has proven to this point we have not fixed the problem, and nor have we created more problems because of the issue, because it has never one time wiped out an entire deer herd. It just hasn't happened. And so I just wanted the committee to be clear on that. I have a business right now, had a positive test. They had over $500,000 investment. The federal government came in. They have bought them out with a minimal amount of money, and they're going to kill all of their deer. And they told them it was such a dire straits that they had to fix it immediately. Now they're telling them it may be like May before they get there to actually kill the deer, and they're spending a couple $1,000s a month just on feed to feed the federal government's deer. I just think there's science that we could be following that would help us to be able to get to a place that would allow these people to stay in business, and it would allow us to move forward. If we follow that science that is out there, Henry's a great resource that's been in this for 20-some years, and a ton of research has been done. The research is out there if we follow it, but I don't think this bill gets us there. It will close businesses in my community, millions of dollars of investment. So I just wanted that to be clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Members, the chair is going to make a personal point of privilege and ask that the members please hold on their questions. We're running very tight on time. I did see a hand. Was that a man raised that you did sign in? Please come to the bench. Please be brief.
It'll just take a second.
Members, we will be voting in 90 seconds. Please proceed. Introduce yourself and please proceed.
Push this button. I'm Adam Steele, Ace Whitetails. My dad and my sister and my wife is back there. I just wanted to put this in perspective a little bit. It's been everything you read. It's CWD is 100% always fatal. And I'm not here to argue with that, but I want to put this in perspective a little bit, just real quick. Since 1967, it was detected in Fort Collins. That was 58 years ago, okay? Since then, it's spread to 35 states that I know of, 475 counties. And I want to look at the population change a little bit from 1970. This is the U.S. whitetail deer population, estimated. 1970, it was at 6.2 million. 1982, it jumped to 12 million. And in the most recent, in 2021, it jumped to 35.2 million. That's an increase of 568% since 1970, just 3 years after CWD was detected. So my point, and as you can tell, I'm probably a little bit uncomfortable here, but my thing is if there was going to be a dramatic impact or a rapid decline or even a decline at all, over 58 years it should have already happened. And that's kind of what I had today. So thank you.
You did an excellent job presenting your case. Thank you. Thank you very much. Will the sponsor please come back to the table, and Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Baker. Representative Chester Burton.
Yes.
Representative Dotson.
May I explain my vote real quickly? This is a very convoluted issue, and I have much respect for the folk on both sides of this issue. I've been here for 5 years, and I've never taken a pass on a vote. But today,
Representative Dotson, I hate to interrupt. We need a motion, staff tells me, on the committee sub as amended, and a second.
I motion.
Please proceed.
Again, it's a convoluted issue. I trust Representative Bray, Commissioner. I appreciate you, and I got one of my businesses here. So it is a very convoluted issue for me, and I was torn before I came. I'm even more torn now. But today I am going to pass. After 5 years of being here, I've never passed on a vote. I just don't have all the information I need at this point. So right now I'm going to pass.
Representative Fugit.
Explain my vote.
Briefly.
I vote yes today, but I reserve the right to change my vote on the House floor. I think there's some work that needs to be done with the farmers to make sure we don't put people completely out of business. I'm not for it. So, but yes today.
Representative Gordon.
Explain my past vote.
Briefly.
I do have a farm in my territory, and I understand if it got to the interior of the state that we've kind of lost all guard there. And I do know these gentlemen, and I know their heart, and I know that they are coming at this from, just as you all, the love of the sport and the love of the deer. And I do hope that this conversation can continue, because we do need to protect this industry.
Representative Lawrence.
No.
Representative Marzian.
Yes.
Representative McPherson.
Explain my vote.
Briefly.
I'm going to vote yes today to get this out of committee, even though I do see that there's room, and I know the process here. If we don't move it today, then we have no option of doing that during session. I do know that there's possible committee subs and different things that we could do, but I will vote yes to get it out of committee today. Thank you.
Representative Moore.
Briefly explain my vote.
Briefly.
I'm a yes today, but I'm also looking forward to using our robust legislative process before us to make sure we can make this as perfect a bill as is possible within our ability. That's a yes.
Representative Pollock.
Explain my vote.
Briefly.
I'm a yes as well to further the conversation, simply because of the communication here on both sides of the issue, and obviously I want that conversation to continue.
Representative Tackett Lafferty. Representative Thompson.
Yes.
Representative Truitt. Representative Wesley.
Permission to explain my vote.
Briefly.
I'm a hunter, and I appreciate everyone being here today. I also appreciate Commissioner Storm and Representative Bray.
hearing the testimony from all the farmers here, I'm really torn, especially with them being checked every quarterly by the USDA. I'm going to say yes to further this conversation, but I'll also just reserve my vote on the House floor for that reason. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Whitaker,
Yes.
Representative White, Representative Wilson,
Yes.
Representative Witten,
Yes, to further the conversation, I vote yes today.
Chair King.
Yes, ma'am. The motion does pass. We do need a motion on the title amendment. And a second. All those in favor of adopting the title amendment? Thank you. Thank you very much. We are adjourned. Oh, it is eligible for consideration on the House floor.
Thank you
We
all.
are adjourned.
Stay involved.